Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is Brendan Magnan, Chair of the Inland Wetlands Commission. I'd like to call to order the December 18th, 2024 public hearing and regular meeting of the Milford Inland Wetlands Agency. Mary Rose, could you please call the roll?
Daniel Bedeker.
Here.
Rajiv Pahav.
Here.
Brian Black.
Here.
Jim Connors.
Here.
Matthew Connors. Brendan Magnan.
Present.
Steve Munson.
Here.
Nicholas Rickey.
Here.
Julie Valvo.
Here.
Warren Field. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum with 2 absent.
Thank you, Mary Rose. And for the record, Mr. Field has recused himself. Moving on, Mary Rose, do you want to review the statutory requirements before we proceed with item B on the agenda?
Sure. This evening, as we continue, multitasking. As we continue to host remote meetings, I want to take the opportunity to highlight a few guidelines to ensure business runs efficiently and that all statutory and administrative rules are followed. In accordance with the Freedom of Information Act and Governor Lamont's executive orders, this meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the City of Milford website. During this meeting, if members of the Inland Wetlands Commission would like to speak, please utilize the raise your hand function via Zoom. All participants will be muted during the meeting unless recognized by the chair. After being recognized to speak, please state your name and address prior to making a statement. Speak only to items in the jurisdiction of the MIWA: wetlands, brooks, rivers, flooding, and wetland habitat. Zoning issues are not under our review. The Inland Wetlands Agency does not take an opinion on what the proposed application is, but what impacts the proposed application may have on wetlands.
Thank you, Mary Rose. At this time, I invite everyone to stand, and if Mary Rose, if you could share the U.S. flag, I'd like to invite everyone to join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic in which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. At this time, I'd be willing to entertain a motion to reorder the agenda. If Mary Rose, could you please reshare the agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Connors. The motion would be to reorder the new business.
Agenda to put new business ahead of our hearing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Connors. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Ms. Valvo seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Lisa, I'm sorry, Tony, roll call vote, please.
I can do that. It's Mr. Bedeker.
Aye.
Mr. Bahav.
Aye.
Mr. Black.
Aye.
Mr. Connors.
Aye.
Mr. Magnan.
Aye.
Mr. Munson.
Aye.
Mr. Rickey.
Aye.
Ms. Valvo.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously. We will now entertain item F1. Mary Rose, could you please introduce item F1?
Sure. Hold on just one second. Two new people entering the room. This is application IW 240091. It's 300 to 336 Subway. It's a proposed redevelopment for an 82,000 square foot warehouse with construction and grading within 150 feet of a wetland and water course in the Housatonic River watershed. It's an application by RD Cinto to remove 2 office buildings and replace it with a warehouse space. There'll be construction and grading and stormwater improvements within 150 feet of a wetland in the Housatonic River watershed. No work is proposed within the wetlands on the site. Kevin Kersaden is here this evening for the acceptance of this application.
Thank you, Mary Rose. Mr. Kersaden, would you like to introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, for the record, Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, my name is Kevin Kersaden. My office is at 3 Lafayette Street here in Milford. Thank you to Mr. Lynch for offering to reorder the agenda, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the agency for doing that. We did not, knowing that you probably have a long night ahead, plan any presentation this evening. It is a pretty straightforward project. There's no disturbance of wetlands. We're removing, if approved, 2 buildings and replacing it with 1 building in the future. But like I said, Mr. Kenny is here. He's the soil scientist for the project. I noticed that he's on tonight, but we just asked that the application be accepted. We've filed the application, the necessary documents, and we filed the application fee. So I think the application is complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kersaden. Are there any initial questions, Mary Rose, that you may have, or any other commissioners as it relates to this application being received? Hearing none,
The application will be transmitted to the city attorney for, the city engineer for review and comment, and I would expect to have those comments back by our next meeting, which is January 15th.
Thank you, Mary Rose. So at this time, I would recommend no additional action unless there's additional questions that anyone may have. Seeing no additional questions, thank you, Mr. Kersaden. We will proceed on to item 1 on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you can reshare the agenda, please, Mary Rose.
Yep. Hold on. But you were going. There we go.
Thank you. As it relates to the public hearing, let me just sort of invite everybody to and welcome everyone to the meeting. Thank you for your participation and your interest. As mentioned in the last meeting of the regular meeting, this process is intended to involve anyone of interest in relation to the preservation of the wetlands. And I'd like to take a few minutes just to, in welcoming everybody, like to sort of remind everyone that we will have a process that we follow on all, as with any public hearing. In this case, please understand and respect the process. This is a formal hearing and a formal proceeding. Everyone has been placed on mute. We would ask that you be recognized by me, the chair, before speaking. The applicant and their consultants will be given the first opportunity to present the application, after which the public will have the opportunity to speak in this following order. Those that may be against in the first instance, and then followed by those who either don't have an opposition or may be in favor of the application, just may have questions. So it could be that you may not fall into sort of the against category, you may fall into the second category. Just bear in mind, we will hear all the deliberation, we being the agency. The agency is comprised of fellow citizens of Milford who volunteer their time and attend regular meetings as well as regular training, including the Connecticut DEEP Inland Wetland Commissioner training, and a number of Connecticut seminars throughout the year to stay relevant to the Connecticut statutes. As it relates to this particular public hearing, it is in reference to IW 24082, 843 North Street, map 115, block 801, parcel 26, at 40, I'm sorry, by 44, I'm sorry, by 843 North LLC. Mary Rose will give a little bit of little bit more introduction, and then I'm gonna hand it over to the applicant to start their presentation. Mayor Rose? Mary Rose, you're on mute.
Apologize. This evening, the file contents lists are located in the document link in the meeting link on the agenda. A notice of this public hearing was published in the Milford Mirror on 12/05 and 12/12/2024. The certificates of mailing have been received are in the documents link. I'm going to read in the call of the public hearing. Pursuant to section 22A39 of the state statutes and section 9 of the Milford and the Wetlands and Watercourses regulations of the city of Milford, notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held on 18 December 2024 on the permit application by 843 North LLC, P.O. Box 267, Milford, Connecticut 06460. The request is for permit to construct a 44-unit 830G development with construction and grading within 150 feet of a wetland and watercourse in the Wepwalk River watershed at 843 North Street, map 115, block 801, parcel 26. Mr. Chairman, would you like the criteria for decision of section 10 of the Inland Wetlands Regulations read in? A copy of which has been given to all the members.
Yeah, I would just summarize section 10.1 and just mention that it's part of the record. That'd be fine.
Okay. The Milford and the Wetland Agency, section 10 holds our criteria for decision. 10.1 covers evidence. The agency may consider the following in making its decision on an application. A, the application and its supporting documentation, including the applicant's comments and testimony. B, public comments, evidence, and testimony. C, reports from other agencies and commissions, including but not limited to the City of Milford and the Water Conservation District, the South Central.
Excuse me?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm trying to find out who's talking and mute them.
You can proceed, Mary Rose.
All right. Southwest Conservation District, the South Central Connecticut Regional Planning Agency, or other regional organizations. Agencies in adjacent municipalities which may be affected by the proposed activity, or other technical agencies or organizations which may undertake additional studies or investigations. Non-receipt of comments from agencies and commissions shall neither delay nor prejudice the decision of the agency. Section 10.2 covers the standards and criteria for decision, which I think the agency, do you want these all read in, Mr. Chair?
No, it's just the point that there are standards pursuant to Connecticut statutes. I can take it from here. Moving on, just as a reminder to the applicant experts, please speak only to the area of your expertise. So speak to the engineering aspects if you're representing engineering. Please don't opine on topics that are not in your expertise. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Lynch to coordinate the presentation from the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, my name is Thomas Lynch. I'm an attorney with the law firm Lynch, Trimbicki, and Boynton. My office is located here in Milford at 63 Cherry Street. And I have the pleasure of being here tonight with three gentlemen who are well familiar with this board, and the board is well familiar with them. I'm here with Ron Wassmer of Connecticut Civil Group, who's designed the site plan for this project. Also here with William Kenny from Fairfield, who is our soil scientist and will give his findings as to the existence of the wetlands off-site and what impact this development may or may not have on those wetlands. And also with us is Matt Popp from Environmental Land Solutions in Norwalk. Matt is a landscape architect and also a wetland scientist, and will be also offering his testimony here tonight. So I'm going to turn things over to them quickly, but I just want to give an overview of what this project is entailing. It is as Mary Rose said, it's a 44-unit development that's being presented to the Milford Planning and Zoning Board under the guidelines set forth in the Connecticut Affordable Housing Act, commonly known as Connecticut General Statute 830G. What we're before you with is an application for work to be performed within your review area, 150 feet of a wetland off-site that has been determined to be in existence. So the extent of our presentation to you is to talk about what the development is entailing in terms of site work, what the development is entailing in terms of mitigating groundwater pollutants, to deal with the retention of stormwater runoff on property. Ron's going to go into how his engineered plans will deal with that. I will note for the record that Ron had originally submitted plans to the agency dated in November of 2024. He subsequently, upon an initial review of the plans with the city engineer, Greg Podleski, submitted revised plans to you, which you have. They were revised December 13th. I noted today that we received a engineering report from Steve Trinkus, who was retained by some of the neighbors in the area that are concerned with this development. I'm going to note just for the record and at the outset, and I don't know how Steve is going to deal with this, but Steve's report is based on findings that he found or comments that he made as a result of his review of the November 2024 plans that were submitted to you. He did not review the December 13th, 2024 plan. So I just want that noted at the outset that you are going to hear obviously from him, and he did submit a report, but that report was based on prior plans that have since been revised after review from the city engineer. And again, Ron will make more reference to this in his report, but the city engineer in his report found that the stormwater retention design will result in no runoff from a 100-year storm, and that's noteworthy and one of the things that we want to stress in our presentation to you. So with that said, I'm going to turn things over to Ron to go through his presentation of the site plan, and then on to Bill and Matt. So Ron, you want to take over?
Thanks, Tom. Good evening. For the record, Ronald Wasmer, professional engineer, land surveyor with an office at 158 Research Drive. As stated, I'm a professional engineer. I've been practicing here in town for over 30 years, and I've been in front of this commission quite a few times. Brief description of the project is an affordable housing development comprised of 44 dwellings and 16 triplex and duplex buildings. Mary Rose, could ask you to share the existing condition survey? Sheet 9 of 12.
Rose, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was trying to get to the sheet before I shared so that we didn't all get dizzy. There we go.
Thanks, Mary Rose. So a brief description of the site. The parcel is 2 acres. It's bounded on the west by North Street. It's bounded on the north by residential land. It's bounded by the east by residential land. And it's bounded on the south by Kozlowski Drive. The site is gently sloping from North Street. It rises up towards the existing house. And then it's gently sloping to the south, to the southeast, and to the northeast. There is an area along Kozlowski Drive within the city right-of-way that is moderately steep for a short distance from the property line to the existing curb line as a result of the construction of Kozlowski Drive. As mentioned before, William Kenny, a soil scientist, is here with us this evening. He's going to give his comments regarding the off-site wetlands, which are indicated on the northeast corner of the property. It's stated as possible off-site wetlands. Commissioners can recall that we had a site meeting 2 weeks ago, at which point we were standing at the back northeast corner of the property, looking towards the direction of these off-site wetlands. Also along with us this evening is Matt Popp. Matt Popp is a professional wetland scientist and a landscape architect. He will also be providing comments. Mary Rose, if we could now go to 3 of 12, which is the grading and drainage plan. Thank you. The overview of the design in regards to the wetland applications to provide stormwater management, erosion control, and address the natural diversity database. I'm going to go through an overview of the stormwater management. The object is to collect runoff and attenuate the runoff and provide infiltration and water quality treatment. Subsequent to the initial plan submission, the city engineer requested the on-site drainage system be designed for a 100-year storm of 24-hour duration. So these plans have been revised to address those comments. Additional soil investigations were done in November of 2023. An additional soil investigation was conducted on November 5th in 2024. In particular, we did some additional test pits in the vicinity of the larger galley systems. The test pits were excavated to the depth of bedrock, and bedrock was found to be between 8 and 11 feet below the existing grade. Soil infiltration tests were conducted on December 5th of 2024 on site utilizing a borehole infiltration test utilizing a steel casing. This infiltration tests were conducted approximately 4 feet below grade. The borehole method is an in situ method or on-site method listed and accepted as a testing method in the 2024 stormwater design manual from the state of Connecticut. The infiltration that we determined was approximately 4.5 inches per hour. The guidelines recommend that you use 1/2 of the on-site measured infiltration rate. So for the purposes of our hydrology study, the infiltration rate of 2 inches per hour was used. At December 5th, we also installed standpipes between 8 and 11 feet deep. I've made observations of the standpipes subsequent to the installation and after the recent rainfall events. No groundwater was observed either at the time of the test pit or in the standpipes. I want to briefly elaborate on the soil horizons. In the soil logs, you will note the description contains a layer of decomposed loose fractured ledge. This was easy to excavate. The decomposed ledge includes sand and silt. Tree roots were also noted to depths of 8 feet. The presence of tree roots indicates that the roots are above the seasonal high groundwater table, and that the soil is not so compact to prohibit infiltration. Test pits are located in close proximity to the larger of the galley systems. These test pits again were excavated to bedrock. The test pits indicate the galley systems are approximately 3 or more feet above bedrock. I'm going to specifically look at a couple locations at this point. Just to the southwest of the clubhouse is galley system number 4. It's one of the larger galley systems on the property. And in that location, we did test pits in November as well as in December. And the bedrock was found to be 8.5 feet and 9.5 feet below existing surface. This is also a location where we did a perk test or a borehole infiltration test. That borehole infiltration test was done 4 feet below existing grade. Now, just to elaborate on the separation between the galley systems and bedrock, the existing ground there is approximately elevation 103. That's above sea level. That's the datum that we're using for these plans. The ledge is 8.5. The bedrock is 8.5 feet below that, or 9.5 feet below that, which results in a bedrock elevation of 94.4 feet above sea level. The top of the galley system in this location is at elevation 101.4, and the bottom of the galley system is at elevation 99.2. So the difference between the bottom of the galley system and the bedrock is approximately 4.8 feet. So in simple terms, we have 5 feet of separation between the bottom of the galley system and the bedrock. You'll notice that there are several other galley systems on that main driveway, and we have test pit number 1 at the first galley system coming in from the driveway from North Street. We also have, then there's 2 other galley systems. They primarily are capturing roof runoff, but we do have a test pit near galley system number 3B. That's test pit number 147. In this location, bedrock was found to be 11 feet below existing grade. I've provided extensive hydrology study to the agency as well to the city engineer. On this project, I have designed the system, the storm drainage system, to slightly reduce the peak runoff from the project to the municipal system in Kozlowski Drive. And that's included in the summary that we provided to the city engineer. As well as your agency. And in short summary, the pre-construction runoff for a 100-year storm of 25-hour duration heading towards Kozlowski Road. There's a catch basin at the kind of the northeast intersection of Kozlowski, or southwest corner of our property. The pre-construction runoff had a peak runoff rate of 3.6 cubic feet per second, and our post-construction runoff volume, as it's attenuated through the extensive galley system, is 2.9 cubic feet per second. So it's a reduction of approximately 0.5 cubic feet per second. The galley systems are comprised of either 24-inch deep or, in some instances, 12-inch deep galleys. The galleys are spread out throughout the site. The objective is to capture the runoff from the roof systems as well as from the parking lot. Runoff from the parking and driveway areas are directed towards catch basins. Each of the catch basins is provided with a 4-foot sump and a hooded outlet that's indicated on the plans in our construction notes. We've also provided an extensive table, which is the following page, and I don't really need you to go to that, but if you want to, there's some additional notes on that page because it was getting quite cluttered to put all this information on the plan. So that second time it calls out that 4-foot sumps and hooded outlets are required. After the catch basins, or in part, the catch basins are stormwater directed towards water quality structures in the form of hydrodynamic separators. So prior to any of the parking lot or road driveway drainage entering the galley system, it's directed through a we specified a storm scepter system. It's a proprietary system. It's commonly specified on projects of this nature. It's been reviewed by the Connecticut DEP, and I can't speak to their exact certification, but I know that it's been commonly used and adopted and recognized as a water quality treatment structure. I want to point out that the infiltration galley systems are at a minimum of 80 feet, 80 lineal feet to the quote unquote possible offsite wetlands. So that galley system number 4 that we were talking about to that offsite wetlands, that's actually 125 feet. There's a smaller galley system just south of the clubhouse. That's the closest to the offsite wetlands supposed, and that is 80 feet from the corner of that galley to the offsite wetlands. In a letter provided to me and the wetland enforcement officer, in a letter provided by me to the city engineer and to the wetland enforcement officer, I stated that additional soil investigation will be conducted by the engineer of record, which at the current time is myself, prior to the installation of any infiltration galleys. It is my opinion that the soils are consistent throughout the site. You know, we've done test pits over towards North Street, over towards Kozlowski Drive, towards the northeast corner of the property. In every instance, we found generally the same soil conditions. We will do these additional testing primarily to adhere to the recommendations outlined in the 2024 Connecticut Stormwater Manual. The city engineer has reviewed the plans and reports. With his review, there are no negative comments in regards to this wetland applications. I was notified today of a third-party review prepared by Mr. Trinkus. I've read his review. Mr. Trinkus's reviews of plans and reports submitted prior to the plans and reports being presented to the commission now, as well as being reviewed by the city engineer. Brief rebuttal to Mr. Trinkus's review. Additional soil investigation has been conducted. Soil infiltration tests were conducted per the stormwater guidelines using the borehole method and a casing. Vertical separations from the galleys to the bedrock is provided. I elaborated specifically on that larger galley system. Pre-treatment of stormwater is provided through catch basins with 4-foot sumps, hooded outlets, and hydrodynamic separators prior to the infiltration galleys. Post-construction runoff to Kozlowski Drive is decreased through the extensive galley systems. In regards to the water quality, best management practices I just summarized are provided through treatment of stormwater prior to interacting with any groundwater. The catch basins with 4-foot sumps, hooded outlets, water quality chambers, as well as a vertical separation of 4 or 5, in some cases greater depth to bedrock. And then lastly, redundant, but the galley systems are at a minimum of 80 feet to any possible offsite wetlands. I'm going to move on to the sedimentation and erosion control plan. sheet 6 of 12. So this plan is just a relatively straightforward sedimentation and erosion control plan. We provided silt fence around the perimeter of the construction. We have anti-tracking pads at the site entrances from North Street, as well as Kozlowski Drive. We've indicated a location of a temporary stockpile, and we indicate a silt fence around that. We've also have silt fence around the perimeter of the property. The silt fence is running parallel to the property, and the comment was made in Mr. Trinkus's report that these are perpendicular to the contours, and that is in fact a true statement. However, these contours are quite flat and far and few between. The slopes are 1 to 2%. Running perpendicular to a 1 or 2% does not seem to be counterproductive to silt fence. We also have some comments on this plan in regards to the natural diversity database. The natural diversity database indicates that turtles are likely in the municipal park, Eisenhower Park, to the west of the property. And it's also worth noting that Eisenhower Park is on the opposite side of North Street. We have notes advising the applicant that of this natural diversity database and instructions for pre-construction inspections, along with inspections throughout the construction process. One other plan that I'm going to briefly touch base on, and that is the snow management plan, which is the next sheet in the plan set. So we provided the city engineer with some calculations regarding the snow. We looked at a 12-inch deep snowstorm. We could handle the majority of that. Some of it may need to be removed off-site. We have indicated 2 larger areas of snow stockpiling. Mary Rose is pointing to one to the west of the clubhouse. So that's a paver area. And we have a catch basin in that paver area that's a water quality chamber, and that catch basin connects to an underground galley system of 24-inch deep galleys. Snow melt from the piles is directed towards these hydrodynamic separators into the infiltration galleys. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Kenny. He can comment on his professional opinion on the soil characteristics. And following Bill will be Matt Pop, and then of course will be available to answer questions of the commission. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Bill Kenny. I'm the principal of William Kenny Associates. We're located in Fairfield, Connecticut. I am a professional wetland scientist and soil scientist. We were retained to review the property to determine whether or not wetlands or watercourses, inland wetlands or watercourses, are present on the property. And if so, we would have field marked the location of the boundaries of those resources. We visited the property about a year ago, November of 2023, and we studied the property and evaluated the soils. And we look at soils because that's wetlands are defined by soil type. So we did do shallow test pits using hand tools, shovels and hand augers, and took soil samples and observed them, and determined that there are no inland wetlands on the property itself, no watercourses on the property. We determined that the soils are primarily well-drained soils. There's some areas of what we believe are moderately well, but it's primarily well-drained soils. Those are soils that generally have a water table, seasonal high water table that's deeper than 6 feet. But we did note that there's potentially wetlands offsite to the northeast. That would be to the top right-hand corner of the drawing that you have. We did not have permission to enter onto that property and make a determination based on actually digging holes and looking at the soil. So what we do is we use our professional judgment. We review maps that are available, aerial photos, and we also stood at the corner of the property and looked at physical features that we could see from the corner of the property, vegetation, the lay of the land, how it pitches, and made a determination that it's our belief that there is a wetland in the distance. We certainly believe that it's no closer than 15 or 20 feet. There was an earlier drawing that shows a stone wall that's just off the property line that was being shared on the screen. And we do believe that if there's a wetland, it's beyond that old fieldstone wall. But we're not able to confirm that without obtaining permission to enter that property and go back and actually look at the soils. But that's our conclusion is no wetlands on the property, no watercourses on the property, possibly a wetland offsite within about 20 feet or so. And I'm very certain that within 150 feet, which is the width of your regulated upland review area, that there is a wetland. Please answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. At this time, invite the rest of your team to present, and we'll entertain questions later in the public hearing.
Very good.
Thank you. Mr. Pop?
Good evening, Matthew Pop, landscape architect, professional wetland scientist. If we can go to that first, I think, plan that had the house, the existing conditions plan. That one, perfect. Just the site has a single house near the center of the site. You could see the existing tree line down towards right there and along the eastern portion of the site, and then down along the southern portion of the site. So approximately, maybe 40% of the site is wooded, and then the rest of 60% is maintained mainly as lawn with a few specimen trees on it. I don't know if you have the landscape plan on there. And I prepared the landscape plan. I'll just go over it quickly. Usually I try to, there it is. Usually try to get as many shade trees on the site as possible. Shade trees provide shading, which reduces the temperature of pavement, which reduces thermal pollution within the stormwater runoff. You want to keep the water that's on the site, that's moving off the site, you want to keep it as cool as possible before it leaves the site and enters into a water course. So we do have 27 shade trees. Shade trees would be like the oaks and the lindens, the larger growing trees. We also have 13 smaller flowering trees throughout the development. We have 20 evergreen trees consisting of hollies and evergreen magnolia. And we have over 100 arborvitae, which I think most people consider a tree. So we have 107 of those. So in total, we have approximately 167 trees on the site being installed. A lot of those arborvitaes along the northern and eastern property lines. I did prepare the application to the Natural Diversity Database, and it did come back with box turtle and possibly wood turtle across the street to the east of the site. Along our side, along our streetscape, there's a stone wall, which kind of prevents turtles from entering onto the site, crossing over North Street. Also in the site across the street, there's a very long linear parking lot covers the length of our site and probably goes maybe an eighth of a mile. I would think that turtles crossing that a pavement would have a tough time getting up and over the curb there. So that kind of acts as another barrier, but in the traffic too from the roads from North Street would be another barrier. So in my opinion, I think turtles coming from the east onto the site would be unlikely. It's possible, but I think again it's unlikely that would happen with those barriers. I did visit the site on December 10th with Ron, and one thing that stuck out, I think Ryan kind of highlighted it, and there was a test pit dug sort of in the north east corner of the site, and just at the edge of the woodlands. It was 10 feet deep, and there was no groundwater in it. I can't remember the last time I saw a test pit that was dug, 10 feet down with no groundwater. We were there for a while and never saw any water in it. That wasn't, too far from the property line. So I was kind of surprised at that. I think that's a good sign for the drainage system. I think with that, if there's any questions on the landscaping plan or, turtles, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Pop. So, Mr. Lynch, do you have any additional comments, or shall we open up for public comment?
No, I would just say that, Ron and Bill and Matt have covered, I think, the major and most pertinent questions relative to the development of this site, especially with Ron, with the discussions about stormwater runoff and the sediment erosion control measures that'll protect the adjacent property during the construction period, and also Matt's landscape plan with the planting of some 167 additional plantings on site. Most of the property is lawn right now, so that the trees that would be removed during the construction with the addition of these 167 new trees really does address some of the concerns about removing foliage. We're mitigating that by replacing a very large number of trees, or planting additionally a large number of trees on site. So with that, I'd leave it to the agency members to ask any questions, and I'm sure the gentleman will be happy to address them. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch and team. I'm certain the agency will have questions. We would like to hear from the public first. So at this time, I'm going to just do a gentle reminder. As you're presenting your concerns or questions, if you're in opposition or you're in doubt, or if you're in favor of this, please just state your questions for the record and let us address the questions. Have the various members of the applicant team can address them, and we can address any questions that we may have as well. But please just state your questions and concerns. Do your best to limit your information that you're presenting to 5 minutes. In the event anybody does bring up something that's not in our purview, I will simply let you know that, but please do your best to remember that we are not the zoning agency. We are regulating the inlands and wetlands, and so therefore please stay in this jurisdiction. Mayor Rose, I think you're going to facilitate the folks joining the participation from the Zoom meeting. Are you? Sorry, you're on mute, Mayor Rose.
Through you, Mr. Chair. We have a list of neighbors who have ceded their time for Mr. Trinkus to speak, and we had at least one other member of the public ask to speak this evening. Is the agency would you prefer to hear from Mr. Trinkus first, or the general public first?
I would, let me just make that call. So Mr. Trinkus, we'd like to give you the opportunity, since you're representing approximately 9 concerned citizens, we'd like to give you the floor. I should have mentioned this earlier. Statutorily, we cannot go beyond 11 p.m. this evening. I don't believe that's going to be an issue, but just as a mention from the onset. So, Mr. Trinkus, I turn it over to you. Please, one last procedural item I should have mentioned. For anyone that's speaking, please make sure that you are stating your name for the record and spell your first name and spell your last name and the address. Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, Stephen Trinkus. I'm a professional engineer with an office at 114 Hunters Ridge Road in Southbury. Stephen, S-T-E-V-E-N, Trinkus, T-R-I-N-K-A-U-S. I was retained by multiple neighbors in the area to review this plan. And as Attorney Lynch pointed out, I did review the earlier plans because the other ones just came in a few days ago based on their dates. And quite honestly, even if I knew that, I wouldn't have had time to review them because of other commitments. However, many of my comments are still valid. The focus of my comments really is on stormwater quality and runoff volume. My expertise is low impact development, which is, water quality and runoff volume. Those are the primary drivers of what we call LID. In the design here, I did not see on the plans where the hydrodynamic separators are, but in looking at Ron's table, I see they're proposed to be after each of the catch basins. However, they're not shown on the site plans. You have to go through that table. They should be shown on the site plan, but they're also going to be located in what we call an online configuration, where all of the runoff which enters the catch basin goes through the separator and into the gallery. Online configurations don't do a very good job of cleaning the water. The manufacturers, I'm sure, provided Ron with data that shows it's going to remove 80 or more % of TSS. That's a lab-based testing. It is not real-world testing. If you look at the University of New Hampshire Stormwater Center field monitoring data, or the American Society of Civil Engineers BMP database, which is based on field monitoring across this country, the UNH data for an online separator is 29% total suspended solid removal. The ASC database is 38%. That's a far cry from 80%. In my letter, which we submitted today, there is a breakdown of the DEP requirements under the 2024 manual. It's a 90% reduction in TSS. A catch basin with a 48-inch sump and a hooded outlet gives you 9%. When you add that to 29% for the online separator, you're at 38%. That's far cry from 90. Additionally, these separators do not do anything for nutrient loading and very little for metals or hydrocarbons. In the early days of stormwater management, when we just used sand on the roads during the winter, particles, metals, hydrocarbons, some nutrients will bind to sediment particles, the fine sediments. These are silt and clay particles, not the big gritty sand stuff. However, as many municipalities and private contractors have gone to using de-icing agents in the winter, the brines that they put down preemptively, you're seeing less and less sediment being used. Therefore, there's less and less sediment for particles to bind onto. So soluble pollutants are a bigger issue, and they pass right through these systems. There's nothing to trap them. I respectfully disagree with the description of the test holes. When you're hitting fractured rock is a limiting factor, whether it's for a septic system or stormwater management. It's ledge. You're digging ledge out. I've dug plenty of holes. I've dug the ledge out. The ledge is still ledge. Just because you can dig it out doesn't change the fact that it is. So you need a 3-foot separation from that fractured rock layer to the bottom of your infiltration system. Many of these systems, at least the original design, and I did not have a chance since the meeting started to go through each of the gallery systems and the elevations. A couple of them seemed to be shallower than they were, but the original ones were all very deep. Based on my letter, I think the shallowest one was 6.5 feet, and they were 10, 12 foot below grade. So I would, if this is continued, I will probably have a follow-up letter in looking at these particular comments. Regarding water quality volume has to be captured and treated simply providing a storage volume does not equate to treatment of the runoff. The analogy I like to use is if you take a bath and you put 6 inches of water in your bathtub, okay, that's fine. If you put a foot in, do you get any cleaner? The answer is no, you don't. So providing a volume does not equate to treatment. So the fact that these gallery systems are providing 2 to 3 times the storage volume of the water quality volume does not equate to the treatment. This is a new development project. There needs to be a pollutant loading assessment of the pollutant loads that will be generated by this site and numerically how the system will reduce them. These galleries are going to discharge these pollutants, particularly the soluble ones, into that fractured bedrock, which is going to get into the shallow groundwater. We have been in a drought recently. I have done numerous test pits, and we've been down very deep, 10, 12 feet, as was alluded to, I think, by Matt, that, no groundwater. The soils are extremely dry. The proper time to determine your maximum groundwater table is to monitor them on a weekly basis from February 1st to May 31st. Right now, you really can't determine maximum groundwater tables. It has just been too dry. And it takes a long time for them to become established. The primary concern is the water quality is not going to be addressed, and ultimately this is going to get discharged through the town drainage system and ultimately to the down gradient wetlands. So you are going to have a impact on the wetlands, granted not right adjacent to the site, but further downstream. Changing the water quality in a wetland or watercourse is an adverse impact. You're changing the water chemistry. It's pretty straightforward. I also believe that if these systems have to be modified to provide a 3-foot separation to the fractured bedrock, you may not be getting the same infiltration rates. Many of the infiltration rates were roughly 4 foot down, according to the report. And in many cases, that's into that fractured rock layer. And I'll be the first one to tell you that fractured rock will have a high infiltration rate because it's cracked. Water will disappear in it. But again, the whole purpose of infiltration systems are to treat the water. A similar condition exists in pure bank run sand and gravel. The gravels have high infiltration capacity, but there's no treatment. The water runs through the gravel too quick to get any treatment. So it's really a water quality issue. I know you're going to hear from some of the neighbors regarding flooding along their road, and still it remains my professional opinion, even with the revised plans, that there is going to be increased flooding due to this development. But the bottom line is this plan does not comply with the current DEP guidelines for stormwater quality, because you've got to reduce total suspended solids 90%, phosphorus 60, and nitrogen 40. The applicant has not even discussed those. You also have to look at metals and hydrocarbons. You have vehicles in and out of here daily. You're going to have the cars, you're going to have the delivery vehicles, oil trucks, whatever they may be, coming in. So you've got the truck traffic and simply the car traffic. Most of the hydrocarbons are from exhaust from vehicles. Metals, primarily zinc, are from our brake pads. I'm sure we've all washed our cars and had to wash black stuff off the rims. That's basically zinc. And when you wash it, it goes into the stormwater system. So again, the primary issue here is impacts of inadequate water treatment of the post-development runoff that will ultimately be discharged to the downgrading wetlands. And if the hearing is continued, I will likely have a follow-up letter after I can look at the current application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trinkus. Invite anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition to raise their hand, and then Mary Rose will admit you if anyone else would like to raise their hand on Zoom. There is a large audience, so I want to give everyone an opportunity. Not seeing any hands being raised. Is there anyone wishing to address the agency or the applicant?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the only other speaker that signed in with Taft was Abby Bernstein. Abigail Bernstein of 519 West River Street. I'm not sure if she's on.
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The engineer covered everything that I would have said so much better, so I don't have any public comment other than that.
And Abigail, would you just mind?
Oh, yes, sorry. Abigail
thank you.
Bernstein, 519 West River Street. Abigail, Abigail Bernstein, Bernstein.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the agency and or the applicant team?
Hey, Mary Rose, I'm not too sure if I was on the list. This is Jim Mondi on 673 North Street. That I don't believe I conceded my time to Steve. So if I could just have a minute or two.
Yeah, Mr. Mondi, you're welcome to speak. You can direct your inquiry to me. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. So Jim Mondi, Monde, 673 North Street. I reside right down the road from 843. Obviously, I'm not an expert here. I'm just very practical, and I've been living here for roughly 26 years. And I do use the Kozlowski cut through, so to speak, many times. My just input, I think, is realistic. During heavy rains, there is an immense amount of water in that Kozlowski North Street, I'll call it the intersection area. So again, just very concerned that there's such high density going in here that, again, there's going to be that much worse runoff, so to speak. It is a significant amount of water that pools in that area. And again, I'm sorry, I don't have a degree that can talk technically, just practically. And so I have immense concerns, and I'm sure the commission here is going to do what you do best and take all this information into account. So I appreciate everyone here, and thank you for letting me speak.
Of course, thank you for your concerns, Mr. Mondi. We appreciate your input. Is there anyone else who would wish to speak? You don't have to be an expert. If you have a concern, please, this is your opportunity to make your voice heard.
I think Phil Pachado would like to speak. Wait, we just need to unmute you.
Yeah, Mr. Pachado, you just need to unmute yourself. Mr. Pachado, we can see lips moving, but it looks like you're muted. You've got to unmute yourself. Mary, is there a way you can unmute him?
I can ask him to unmute. Mr. Pachado, there you go.
Now?
You got it.
Yeah.
All right. My name is Phil, Phil, Pichotti, Pichotta. I'm at 879 North Street. So that's one house over. First of all, there was one comment about turtles. Well, I have eastern box turtles in my yard. So they are in this wetland. And I'm not sure why you're only concerned about turtles. I'd be concerned about tree frogs, quite honestly. I think they're in there as well. And you talk about diversity. I think tree frogs are really suffering these days, and we've had a significant population of tree frogs in that area. So I don't know if they're actually in that area itself, because I don't know. The other thing that I would look for inland wetlands, I know you talk about soils and stuff like that, is skunk cabbage. The lowly skunk cabbage, to me, that's an indication of wetlands. And I don't know, maybe you're stuck with your definition of soils, but skunk cabbage, and I don't know if they actually grow up to that area or not, but I know they're close because I don't go over there. So there's that. And I do mimic about the water on Kozlowski Road. I know in May, it was over the top of the curbs there along that road, right alongside that lot there. And I'm concerned, I'm on a well, and I'm concerned about the quality of my well water after this water flows into these galleys and then across the bedrock and then flow. If you have snow with these de-icers in it, I think I agree with engineer, what is being treated with this, how is that gonna happen? You know, if they wanna remove all the snow from the site every time there's a snowstorm, instead of letting it melt there, maybe that's an option. But I don't see that as that happening. And I'd also like to know where they're gonna dump the snow afterwards, after they take it. So, you know, just because you say I'm gonna move it someplace, to me, that's not a real plan. So those are some of my issues. And I'd also like to know how many trees are there currently, and then they're putting these little, you know, counts of, you know, 200 arborvitaes, you know, which are really little dinky little trees, have no, you know, one of these big trees that they're going to take down would take out the foliage of all the trees that they're going to put back in there. So anyway, that's some of my comments. So, okay.
Thank you so much for your concerns and your voice this evening. We appreciate it. Anyone else wishing to address the agency or the applicants?
Hello, this is Mike Zalucki. I'm having some camera problems. I can't get my camera working. Mary Rose, can I speak? I didn't.
Yeah, you can go ahead and speak. You don't need to be registered. Now's your opportunity. Just
thank you.
Say your name for the record.
My name is Mike Zalucki, M-I-K-E. Last name is T-Y-L-U-T-K-I. I live at 70 Eisenhower Drive, which is adjacent to the park on the, it was noted that the applicants stood on the property and looked over the adjacent property lines, and that they're saying that there's no impacts to the wetlands or on the other side of North Street. Anyone familiar with the park, and the engineer noted that, you know, the runoff and the pollutants with the runoff are going to go downstream, downhill into the park. If you look just south of Fowler Field in the woods there, you know, between Fowler Field and the playground area, there's like a marshy area, a pond. It is constantly filled with green scum even now. There's just a lot of runoff already being introduced into the Wetland waterway. And the city's plan of development, I'm not trying to make this a zoning issue, I'm saying the overall plan of development says, you know, we're supposed to try and consider and enhance and preserve the Wetland waterway and the natural diversity areas. And if you look at the maps, this property borders, and because the water is going to run right off of it under North Street and almost without any filtering into the Eisenhower Park plan pond, it's very impactful to a large wetland. And, you know, I think that needs to be considered. It's part and parcel of the Wetland waterway. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to address the matter?
This is Phil Pisciotti. I have one other comment.
Go ahead.
You know, we talk about these boreholes and stuff like that from the depth from the surface, but isn't this thing going to be leveled off? Aren't they going to take some of the topsoil off? How far down is that going to happen? I don't know, because I know when you look at that Kozlowski, that berm going up is quite substantial, and they're going to have to take that down to make it fairly level with Kozlowski, right? So I don't know. Once you take off 2 feet, now you're down a lot lower towards the ledge. So I don't know. I couldn't see that from the plan, but maybe look at that, please.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the agency? Is there anyone else wishing to address the agency? I'm going to go one more time, and then we're going to give the applicant an opportunity to address the concerns that were mentioned. Is there anyone, just as a reminder, if you have anything, now is the opportunity to say it. normal public hearing fashion, the applicant team will have the opportunity to address the concerns that were stated. Once they address those concerns, there'll be an opportunity for the public to speak again on those particular topics that were mentioned in the second round, not in the original round. Okay, so again, this is your opportunity. Yes, Ms. Bernstein, have a go.
Hi, I'm sorry. I just wanted to take this opportunity again, Abigail Bernstein, 519 West River Street. I just wanted to encourage the board and the applicant to consider implementing more green infrastructure, such as pervious pavement and additional native plantings to help aid in water filtration. As previously mentioned, the increased impervious surface, the pavement, regardless of the stormwater management practices put in place, does affect water quality, especially with the additional application of road salts in the winter. This could affect the conductivity of the Wetwog River, as this property doesn't have any direct part of the Wetwog River in it, but it is part of the larger Wetwog River watershed, and any action on a land in a watershed, everything is connected. And so action taking place on this parcel does affect the health of the Wetwog River, which is already an impaired river according to the state.
Thank you, Ms. Bernstein. Did you just finish your comments? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other attendees wishing to address the applicants or the agency? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Lynch, I'm going to turn it over to you for you to address the concerns, you and your team. Just keeping in mind that we may have questions after this public hearing. So we may have additional questions that you'll need to address, but please do your best to address the concerns that were identified. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll leave it up to Ron, Bill, and Matt if they have comments to make.
Okay. Again, for the record, Ronald Wasmer, professional engineer. I just want to reiterate that I participated in the soil investigations, and I've been doing this work for 30+ years. I have to make some professional judgments when I'm looking at the soil types that we're investigating. I did make the statements that it's decomposed, fractured ledge. This decomposed ledge, as it decomposes, becomes sand and silt. So we're not digging through just loose rock like you would see at a rock quarry. We're digging through decomposed ledge that's been there for, I don't know, eons, I'll say. It can put a definite time to it. The percolation tests, infiltration tests were done utilizing the guidelines of the 2024 Stormwater Manual, which is the tests aren't new, but it's a relatively new requirement of the 2024 Stormwater Manual. The infiltration rates were not too fast. They weren't too slow. They're about 4.5 inches per hour. For the design, we used 2 inches per hour. The DEP Stormwater Manual does make comments about soils that have rapid infiltration, and you can modify that by making some augmentations to the soil. However, the infiltration rates that we observed don't fall into that category, so they're not rapidly infiltration soils. Again, the 2004 Stormwater Manual comments that residential developments are not considered a high pollution loading type of development. The objective of this plan is to protect the off-site wetlands. I've said it once and multiple times. I'll reiterate that our closest infiltration galleys are 80 feet to the possible off-site wetlands. We have in some instances 5-6 feet of soil horizon that the infiltration will have to pass through prior to hitting any bedrock. So that will have a sufficient distance to reduce any pollutant loads that may head towards the offsite wetlands. There's multiple steps prior to the infiltration galleys too. And yes, I do have to rely on the manufacturers that submit information to the state of Connecticut. And when they say it's 80% reduction pollution load, and I also would say that I'm sure in many instances, this commission has seen plans that utilize these types of water quality chambers. So it's not like we're picking something that's completely irrelevant. There were some comments just recently with some of the neighbors about grading and depths to, once we remove the soil. So you've all been to the site. It's relatively flat. There's minimal grading that's needed to develop this. We're not going to be digging out 10 feet of soil or even 3 feet of soil for that matter. Again, the infiltration tests were done relatively at the level of the bottom of the galley system. They're much shallower than the system that Mr. Trinkus looked at previously. There is one area where there will be some grading, and that is in particular along Kozlowski Drive, primarily because we need to remove the steep incline that they created when they built Kozlowski Drive to provide driveways that are reasonably sloped driveways, 6%. That's a good slope for a driveway. It, allows water to run off, but it's not so steep that it causes inconveniences with cars. In most instances with parking areas, we avoid steeper slopes, primarily for the inconveniences of people parking cars on slopes. And with that, I think that's the end of my comments. If either of the other professionals want to add comments, that's fine. Thank you.
Matt Pop, regarding the tree frogs, I would probably anticipate them to be on the site. But it's not a wetland dependent species, so that probably shouldn't be addressed by the wetland agency, in my opinion. Again, with the turtles, the box turtles, again, I'm always looking for barriers to the site. We do have the stone wall along North Street. We have the traffic along North Street, and then on the other side of the street to the east where they are located, there is that large, long parking lot with the curbs that kind of prevents their movement. But again, it doesn't. There may be box turtles, to the north of our site. But again, I think their only place that they were mapped on the Natural Diversity Database maps were to the west of our site. That's it.
Bill, anything else to add on your end?
There was a neighbor made a reference about skunk cabbage, and that is a classic wetland indicator plant. It's called an obligate plant. When you find that, roughly 95% of the times you find that in high concentrations, you're in a wetland. We did look for that, and we didn't see it.
All right, and I'll just make a conclusion comment that again, these plans were reviewed by the city engineer. His review speaks for itself. By and large, he found that Ron's design and engineering of the site development plan was adequate to address stormwater runoff. I will also note that he had made a comment about 5 curb cuts or 5 driveways coming in off of Kozlowski Drive and cited the city ordinance as to perhaps that was not in compliance with the city ordinance within the frontage that the property has on Kozlowski Drive. It may be limited to 4. So again, before going to zoning, we will be revising plans and removing one of those driveways that will, even though it's rather de minimis, it will reduce the impervious surface of the site plan. So I think that's the extent of our presentation, and if the agency members now have questions, feel free.
Thanks, Mr. Lynch. We're actually going to turn it back to the public for additional info, and then we'll address questions that we may have. So at this time, I would invite the public to comment, bearing in mind the agency, just by practice, will reserve the right to ask questions. So as we're listening to your concerns, we'll be addressing follow-up questions. Please, Mr. Trinkus, if you want to take the lead, given that you're representing multiple constituents, give you the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve Trinkus for the record. I believe Ron made the comment that, well, this is residential, which is not a high pollutant load site. Well, high pollutant load sites are gas stations, DPW garages, warehouses, truck warehouses, things like that. However, while single-family residential roofs do not contribute a high pollutant load, multifamily does. And it's because of the directly connected impervious cover associated with the driveway and parking lots. So that is why you have to address water quality. And again, there's an approach, the approach that's in the 2024 manual, which came out of Massachusetts, to calculate pollutant loads and the effectiveness of treatment systems actually is incorrect, because it adds removal rates together. You cannot add removal rates together, because as the water gets cleaner through the first practice, the second system in series is not as efficient. All of the pollutant renovation values that are provided for treatment systems in many documents are based on standalone systems. And when you're in series, as you begin to clean the water, it gets harder to clean it the more systems you have in line. So the removal rates actually get reduced by a certain percentage as you go down the line. It is a necessary analysis. Regarding decomposed rock, I have done many test holes in 45 plus years of practice, and I've hit that decayed ledge, and when you look at it coming out of the hole, it looks like soil, but it is considered ledge under the health code, even if you can dig it out. So if it's a restrictive layer under the health code for a vertical separation to a septic system, it remains a vertical restriction for stormwater management, because it is porous in the hole to some degree. And again, there is no treatment of water in it. And that's the whole purpose of providing adequate treatment. And this plan simply does not provide adequate treatment before this water is discharged into these underground systems. That's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trinkus. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address this matter at this time?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Abigail Bernstein would like to speak.
Ms. Bernstein, I think your hand was raised. It was still up from before.
Yeah, it was still up from before.
But you're welcome to speak. Okay. Is there anyone wishing to address the comments that were just made? If none, Mr. Lynch and team, is there anything you would like to address at this time, or are you comfortable with turning it over to agency questions?
We're happy to entertain any questions the agency members have.
Thank you. So commissioners, you've heard a lot of concerns that were raised, and obviously a lot of information that was presented. What questions do you have?
I have a question for Matt Pop.
Mr. Connors, go for it.
Matt Pop, on the arborvitaes that you're proposing, are they standard arborvitaes or are they green giant? Because the deer will have a feast on regular arborvitaes.
No, most of them are green giants. Hang on a second, I'll tell you. The great majority of them are green giants. 89 are green giants, and I have 18 that are not green giants. And the 18 that aren't green giants are kind of located between the units where I figured there won't be deer activity, but you are correct. The deer will
I say that with
definitely cover my-
experience.
Definitely, yeah, yeah.
Any other questions, Mr. Connors?
No,
Okay, Mr. Black?
Chair, when we're on our site walk, I believe you mentioned this, there's some very large trees in that northeast corner. Providing some shelter for that proposed wetlands in the northeast corner. Those are going to be removed. I was wondering, Mr. Kenny, if you think that had any negative impact if there's wetlands in that northeast corner.
Mr. Kenny, you're on mute, Mr. Kenny.
I just looked at the wetland mapping. I haven't studied that. I could consider it further, but I haven't reviewed the drawings that closely. With regard to proposed improvements, I just focused on existing conditions and mapping wetlands.
Mr. Black, just restate your question so that the application or the applicant team can take that as an action, please.
Yeah, we noticed on site, I believe you called us out, Mr. Commissioner, that there's some large trees over there providing some shade to that proposed wetland in the northeast corner. Is there any detriment to that proposed wetlands if those trees are removed?
Right. And Mr. Pop, is that something you can address?
I get Matt Pop. I'm not sure, again, where that wetland is, but to me, it looked like it was like Bill Kenny said, it was on the other side of the stone wall. And I don't think the trees on our side, on our site, are shading anything beyond that stone wall. Maybe except that, when the sun is setting, there might be getting some shade, but during the middle of the day, when the sun is high and when you want the shading, I don't think the trees on our site are providing shade that far away. There are trees, off the site also too.
Yeah, Mr. Pop, if I could, that was, as Mr. Black said, that was a concern when I was on site. It did seem like there were some large trees that were being proposed to be removed. So to the extent that you could just clarify, you said earlier in your testimony that a lot of consideration was taken to ensure that water is, temperate and made cool as possible with the use of oak trees, etc., shade trees. So could you just give more consideration to that concern as it relates to the possible wetlands and also just the concern around water treatment and the temperature of water? Can you address that point?
Yeah, I think behind the clubhouse, which is in the north east corner of the site where the wetland is, we probably could add larger growing deciduous trees and maybe take the arborvitaes out. There is a fence there, and there's no houses directly behind that. The arborvitaes are providing screening, so I think that maybe we put in, again, like oak trees and maples and sweet gums along that property line. That may help.
Okay. I think that would be a concern and consideration we'd like you to consider. The video wants to turn off by itself. Mr. Ritchie, question?
Mr. Chairman, if I could make a comment.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Watson.
The soil, once you get 4 feet below ground, the soil remains at a relatively consistent temperature. Again, all of the stormwater is being directed to subsurface galley systems. Those galley systems will absorb, the soils there will absorb the heat. The mass of the soil has a much greater thermodynamic capacity than the water does, so it will attenuate any heated water that comes off the parking lot, and shortly after it enters the soil, it will be at a temperature similar to the soil. So we're not discharging hot stormwater into a wetlands. We're discharging stormwater off of the parking lot that would be obviously warmer than rainfall. However, it has the infiltration system to attenuate that temperature. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wassmer. Mr. Ritchie, you have a question?
For you, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on Commissioner Black's concern about the tree covering the canopy. The location of the single-story clubhouse in that general area where there is rather a large canopy right now, would that affect any of the stormwater or the wetland area going downhill that way? And how much would that general area be raised up? We see on the map, I have an older map here, but obviously it's C is listed as the high point of 103.25. And I'm guessing the property slopes down to the inland wetland area. So how much would that be raised up on the site plan to get everything up to grade? That's my concern with the clubhouse there, sloping downhill, that being raised up a little. Obviously, I'm assuming the proposed clubhouse is a slab foundation. There's no basement on there. And how much displacement will that have on the groundwater too if we put a slab in there at 48 inches to level of the property? Is that going to displace water out and cause more of a problem too to the inland wetlands? I know the area, if you look down by Platt Tech, there's definite defined wetlands. There is open space across the street on Kozlowski, which goes north up the Bolt, which was before our commission prior. Yeah, we know our wetlands, so the probability of wetlands in the area that Mr. Kenny state is strong. And that's another concern I have with the clubhouse in that general area and the tree canopy being removed.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Mr. Pachetta, could you please mute your phone? Thank you. Mr. Pop or Mr. Kenny, are you going to address the concerns that Mr. Ritchie just raised? Or Mr. Wassman, who's going to take that?
So I'll make some brief comments. Again, the excavation is minimal. The clubhouse has a first floor elevation of 104. The existing ground towards the front of the clubhouse is about 103. It's about a 1 foot fill, which is basically the thickness of the slab. The grading behind the clubhouse won't be changed at all. We do indicate a yard drain in the back just to capture any slight runoff and direct it towards the infiltration system. So there's not a lot of excavation or filling in the area of the clubhouse. We don't see any high groundwater table, so we're not displacing any groundwater. Typically, that's not considered anyways in building construction.
Mr. Kenny, from a soil scientist and wetlands expert perspective, can you just explain whether or not you, in your expert opinion, have a view about whether the proposed plans and specifically the areas in proximity to the wetlands would have any adverse impact either indirectly or directly as proposed?
I'm not prepared to do that this evening. I didn't evaluate the site plan. I just reviewed the existing conditions for the presence or absence of wetlands. So I haven't studied the site development plan.
Okay. Mr. Lynch, just a procedural question for us. We customarily do ask that question, as you would imagine. So is it your expectation that following this meeting, which it sounds like we need to continue it, you would solicit Mr. Kenny to offer that expertise? Or
yes, we can discuss that. And as Bill said, he prepared his findings based on the existing conditions and whether or not there were wetlands present on the site. If we're looking for additional information or an additional opinion from him as to what effect the tree canopy has on a off-site wetland that's 30 feet off-site or 20 feet off-site, I don't know if he's able to do that, but we can, certainly discuss that, and especially with the meeting, obviously, it's going to be continued. Mr. Trinkus said that he needs to look at the revised plan, so we can have that discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. That'd be great. I think I would like to just think about some of the concerns.
He's still rolling around.
I'm sorry, could everyone please mute yourselves unless recognized by the chair? Mary Rose, did you want to say something?
I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure that all of the participants from the public are aware of where the raise your hand function is, and everyone may not have gotten a chance to speak. So if you want to put a call out for folks to find that function.
Let me just say this for the record. I asked for public participation numerous times. So if folks didn't have the opportunity, I'm happy to give folks the opportunity, but as the record reflects, that was.
You want to get in pajamas?
Sorry, who was speaking?
Can't find it. Joyce, I think. Joyce, did you wish to speak to the commission?
No, thank you.
Okay, we're going to mute you. Thank you.
Okay, let's continue on. Listen, to the applicant team, I heard some pretty strong concerns raised by the third-party expert that I would like you to take the time to address. Specifically, the comment that was made that it doesn't comply with DEEP guidelines as it relates to the 90, the 60, and the 40% referenced. So please take the time to address that. I would like, Mayor Rose, if you could help for the agency, for the benefit of the agency and for the benefit of everyone on the meeting, could you assist with summarizing the city engineer's review of the proposed plans? And before you do that, the one observation I would make is I would like Mr. Plawski, if I could say his last name right, I would like him to summarize out of his 7-page review. I would like him to highlight the ones that are wetland specific. Even by his own acknowledgement, he acknowledges that a lot of these are zoning related. I would simply ask that he be requested to sort of highlight the ones that are wetlands related, and I would like him to be, as our third-party expert for the city, to comment on the claim that was raised by the third-party expert that the plans do not comply with DEEP guidelines. I'd like that to be clearly evaluated, and a determination is made.
I can share the city engineer's report with you if you'd like.
Please. That'd be great.
Okay.
Just so everyone knows what we're talking about. You don't have to read it. You can just show it on the screen. It's a matter of public record anyway, but that would be great.
Mr. Chair, if all things have gone well, which don't appear to have happened. So this is the city engineer's report dated December 17th, 2024. Mr. Plawski goes through what the plans and reports that he's reviewed, all the observation he's made from those things and visiting the site, goes back to cite city requirements and ordinances, and then comes down to a series of recommendations and requests. Basically, his recommendations in the end are here on page 6, asking for additional test results, are saying that test results can be done and revised as necessary. Mr. Wasmer had said they didn't dig up the whole site. They did test pits through the manual to design the plan, as is typical in a lot of sites we see. They get a general characteristic of the site, and they will do final test pits before they do final construction. They don't want to dig up an entire site if they're not going to proceed with the project. And then he goes into city requirements for curbs, the driveways that Attorney Lynch talked about, and repair of Kozlowski Road should this project be reviewed and approved. But I will have him go through and pull out specific wetland comments for you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Lynch, could you also address, as part of your follow-up, the concern that was raised with regard to the flooding in the intersection and potential downstream impacts? Perhaps that's just part of what Mr. Kenny will do, or whoever you solicit, but just to make sure we address that concern as well, if it's not already addressed in some way.
Yes, I'd be happy to. And, you know, not to jump into what Mary Rose was saying, because she's asking Greg to make a specific, I don't know if he's going to make a separate memorandum to you, but just noting his letter, it appears that items number 17 through 34 of his letter are wetlands related. So I'm just making that comment for the record. If people want to look at this between now and when Greg may submit something subsequent to tonight, it appears that items 17 through 34 are the wetland related comments.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Great. Yeah, and I guess just as a matter of helpful to help the process along, just as long as you and the applicant team can just take stock of all the concerns that were raised and make sure that we address them. We certainly need to do that. Are there other questions from the agency? I do see a number of the public having a question, but just bear with me. I need to ask for the agency to deliberate at this time. So, Mr. Munson. Mr. Munson, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Mr. Chairman, it seems to me that the main issue that is not quite resolved is basically the conflict between Mr. Trinkus and Mr. Wasmer about what is sufficient treatment of the water.
Agreed.
How far does it go? It's a little hard to ask the question, I guess, because I think it's kind of almost a site-specific thing. But I guess I would ask Mr. Wasmer, is there a standard that is generally followed in your industry regarding percentages of the percentage of pollutants that might be taken out of water during a treatment? Or is it more a matter of total numbers? I mean, is there a standard? Basically, I guess is the question. And if so, is it recognized in statutes, or is it just generally an industry standard?
Thank you, Mr. Munson. Go ahead, Mr. Watson.
I will address that coming up. I'm not at this second. There's guidelines in the 2024 Stormwater Manual. Again, the objective of this commission is to protect the wetlands. We're not discharging stormwater directly to the wetlands. We're discharging stormwater to an infiltration system that has an extensive distance prior to any water entering any wetlands. That in itself is removing the pollutant loads that is being introduced as a result of vehicles in the parking lot or roofs to a lesser extent.
Okay, because Mr. Trinkus seems to believe that the amount of treatment is inadequate. That kind of what I was getting from his remarks. Is that?
So there's different structures that we're proposing, and they are indicated on the plan. And there's a leader saying what detail they are, and they're called. The trade name is a storm scepter. It's a hydrodynamic separator. These are generally considered water treatment structures, and they're supposed to remove a significant portion of the pollutant load, and then again, the infiltration into the ground here is going to treat any water prior to it hitting the bedrock, and then it has to travel along the bedrock to the offsite wetlands. So just in the fact that we have this extensive infiltration system is removing any pollutants before it enters any offsite wetlands.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Munson. Other questions from the commissioners?
No, I have none.
I do see a hand raised by Kim Whom. If you can, do you want to be recognized? Okay. Mr. Pop, a question for you. As it relates to the box turtle, the protection of the box turtles, can you, and maybe Mary Rose, you can help share the proposed plan, but I do believe, I vaguely recall that there is some proposed barriers that are intended to address any potential box turtles east of the property. I do believe, Matt, Mr. Pop, you did speak about sort of natural barriers, but could you just kind of take us through that sort of top to bottom, just kind of end to end, help us understand as it relates to the proposed development, what protections are being proposed or will be put in place for that?
Sure, Matt Pop. So typically when there's box turtles within an area of development, before the trees are cut or there's any land disturbance, a silt fence or a barrier will be put up along the perimeter of the site. I think the road and the stone wall would act as one barrier, but maybe along the northern property line and the eastern property line, a barrier would be put up. Somebody like myself or Bill Kenny would walk the site to see if there's any turtles out at the site. Now, I do have a scientific collector's permit, and one of the things that allows me to do specifically is just to relocate the box turtles. So typically, you would just walk the site. If you find any box turtles, they would get relocated to the outside portion of the fence. We'd also train or meet with the contractors to tell them, if they see box turtles, what they would do. You wouldn't see a box turtle probably from like now or November through April. Box turtle is usually active, May through, September, October. So again, it's mainly a protection. Are we going to be seeing them? Just to relocate them and walk the site. So typically, once the barrier is put up, you walk the site. The contractor there'd be notes on the plan for the contractor to walk the site each morning before they start work. This is a fairly easy site to walk. It's open. I've gone to some sites where they've been wooded and they're kind of tough to see, but this site with the lawn area in the front, you can see most of the site fairly quickly. So those are the notes. There are turtle protection notes, on the screen, but briefly, that's what they are. You put the barrier up, you look for them, and you move them. But you have to do it again, the barrier up before the trees come down, before there's construction equipment out at the site.
Thank you, Mr. Pop. A follow-up on that. And for me anyway, part of those notes were blurred. So Mary Rose, if you can just refresh that screen. My follow-up, there we go. On my side, they're clear now. So as it relates to these notes, to the concern that was identified earlier by a resident, I believe it was east of the property, but can you just kind of walk us through, would it be all the perimeters of the property that you're going to be inspecting and addressing in the measures that you're proposing?
Yeah, but that natural diversity database, the highlighted area actually hit this site. But when I did send the letter to the application to the natural diversity database, they did say that they were on the other side of the road. But regardless, though, we need a barrier around the whole site. And again, I think the stone wall along North Street is a good barrier to start off with. I'm not sure about if there's a stone wall on the southern side of the site, but if there isn't, we would need a barrier there. So the entire site would get, wrapped.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear. That's how I understood it, but I wanted to make sure that was clear. Okay.
Yep.
As I look at my notes, are there other questions that the commissioners may have? As you're thinking about this application, are there other questions, or is there additional information you would like the application team to come back to us on as we continue this public hearing? I have a follow-up question. Mr. Wasmer, I believe, directed to you. Actually, it's a two-part question. Did you guys consider more pervious solutions as it relates to sort of the infrastructure, and also obviously we know that comes with maintenance, but also with respect to the snow area, did you consider relocating that snow area away from the adjacent possible wetlands? And if so, what was your consideration on that?
Well, the consideration was this was an open area that we had available to use for snow storage. We could use impervious or pervious pavers there. I'm really, to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of those. I just think that they require maintenance, and I think a short term after they're installed, they no longer function as pervious pavers. So they may sound good in the beginning, but after a short time, it's no different than a paved surface. That's my opinion. And the reason that we picked that location was an open area that we had. We've also, prior to our original application, we did add in a water quality chamber in the vicinity of that snow storage area, as well as infiltration system below that.
If I could add a comment, you need areas to put snow that are easy to push it into, which they have here. You're relocating it in odd areas, it's not going to end up there in the real world.
Yep. Mr. Connors, do you have real experience in this? Do you have any reservations or concerns about the proposed location of the snow shop?
No, I don't. But like I said, if you go moving it around the uneasy areas to push it, it's not going to happen.
Okay, great.
It will on paper, but it won't in the real world.
Yeah, well, that's why you're here. We appreciate that. So, okay, so at this time, unless there's any other questions from the agency, I'm going to call for a motion to continue the public hearing.
I'll make that motion, Brian.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mary Rose.
If you're going to continue the hearing, you need to continue it for specific items? Do you wish to continue it for those specific items you mentioned? And
yes.
Those items will be what is discussed at the next meeting.
Yes, correct.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, so those specific items you mentioned was clarification of the city engineer's memo, the lack of compliance or compliance with the DEP guidelines, address the flooding on Kozlowski Drive, And I think Mr. Pop addressed the turtle protocol. Was
Yeah,
there anything I missed?
I think the other one was the addressing the canopy for the wetlands in that northwest corner. I had that in my notes. Is that consistent with it?
Correct. And
members? Yep.
That's correct, Mr. Lynch. And as well, the I think you mentioned this, Mayor Rose, but just sort of this determination on whether or not the proposed stormwater treatment plans comply with guidelines and if they are sufficient insofar as the pollutants that were identified, the pollutant concerns, and as well as a professional wetland scientist opinion about the proposed plans as to whether they would have any adverse impact on the adjacent watercourses or wetlands. I believe that covers all of the specific areas that need attention. The only other sort of note I had was in relation to the stormwater quality. There was a concern raised about well water in the adjacent homeowner, and so I would like that to be addressed as well, to be sure that we're covering that concern in some manner. And Mayor Rose, just procedurally, we need to make the motion to extend the public hearing until the next meeting, which is January 15th, 2025, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So, Mr. Connor, since you made the motion, is that your motion? Mr. Connors?
You want me to second the motion?
Is that your motion?
That is my motion, yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Who's going to second the motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Mr. Ritchie, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Did we address all the concerns that we need to? There's no new information because, again, just as a reminder for everyone participating, now is the time. There's no additional requests for additional information after this time. So if you have a doubt, it should know. Okay. So hearing none, Mayor Rose, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bedeker. Everybody's still on mute.
Commissioner
Bedeker.
You need to come off mute.
Aye.
Commissioner Bahav.
Aye.
Commissioner Black.
Aye.
Commissioner Jim Connors.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Commissioner Steve Munson.
Aye.
Commissioner Ricky.
Aye.
Commissioner Balbo.
Aye.
Chairman Magnin.
Aye. The motion carries unanimously. At this time, I'd like to thank everyone for participating. Members of the public, thanks for your participation in the process, your comments. Thanks to the team, Mr. Lynch, your team, for your deliberation and your expert testimony. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you coming back to us with responses to all these
Great.
concerns.
And thanks for all your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Okay, moving on. We're going to continue our meeting. Mayor Rose, if you don't mind putting the agenda back up. I believe we're going to old business E1, that is, which
Actually, we're going to public comments for items not on tonight's agenda.
okay. Is there anyone wishing to address the agency on topics not otherwise on the agenda? Seeing none, moving on to the next agenda item. Mary Rose, could you show the agenda, please?
Trying the screen's jumping around. I apologize. This will not move. So next item is item E, old business. It's 240083. It's 0 Daniel Street. This item has been withdrawn from application.
Okay, thank you, Mary Rose. Moving on to the next agenda item, do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting as presented?
I'll make a motion. Sorry.
Mr. Black, I believe you had the motion. Mr. Ritchie, are you seconding?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we also have the sidewalk minutes from December 4th.
Okay, we'll take the motion call on this one first. So roll call vote on the December 4th regular meeting, please.
Commissioner Bedeker.
Aye.
Commissioner Bahav.
Aye.
Commissioner Black.
Aye.
Commissioner Connors.
I abstain.
Commissioner Steve Munson.
Aye.
Commissioner Ricky.
Aye.
Commissioner Valvo.
Aye.
Chairman Magnan.
Aye. Motion carries. The minutes as presented are approved. Moving on to, do we have a motion to approve the site walk minutes for December 4th? Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Ritchie makes the motion. Who's going to second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Thank you, guys. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Bedeker.
Aye.
Commissioner Bahav.
Abstain.
Commissioner Black.
Aye.
Commissioner Jim Connors.
Abstain.
Commissioner Munson.
Aye.
Commissioner Ricky.
Aye.
Commissioner Valvo.
I abstain.
Commissioner Magnan. I'm Chairman Magnan, sorry.
Aye. No problem. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to staff report. Mary Rose, do you want to do an abbreviated staff report, please?
Sure. My staff report is in the document links and the notes. We continue to be busy. We're finishing up the community rating system by this Friday. We have had inquiries about a few larger projects. We've received one application. We have a couple others that'll be coming for us in the new year. Those commissioners whose terms are up should be receiving letters from the mayor's office. And you'll need to be sworn in before the next meeting, which is January 15th. And you'll be getting there is information in the notes about some training. It's an all-day Saturday training by the Connecticut Bar Association. I believe several of you have gone to this in the past. It will be by Zoom. It's very informative. It's the Connecticut Bar Association Land Use Commissioners Training.
Mary Rose, when is that again? Sorry, real quick. When is that?
That is March 22nd, and it's from 9 till about 4:30.
What day of the week is that? Do you know?
That is a Saturday.
Joy. Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for me?
No.
If not, thank you all for your service and happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thank you, Mary Rose. Moving on to Chair's report. Thanks everybody for your service. As Mary Rose just said, really great interaction tonight, and let's continue to ask good questions. Also, for those that are contemplating being reappointed, please continue to volunteer. Mr. Jim Connors, and I believe there's a couple of others. So please, we value your service. I know I do. I'm sure I speak for the rest of the agency. So.
Well, if I get reappointed, I'll be there.
That's half the battle, volunteering. But thank you. Okay, and I guess we won't have our lemon bars at tonight's meeting because we're virtual. In spirit, I think Mary Rose made some lemon bars for us. Um,
Oh, the special meeting for those lemon bars?
we
Sorry,
might
guys.
need to. Yeah, so again, a reminder, public hearing will be continued on January 15th. Please make every effort to attend, and if for any reason you can't for some reason, please by all means let Mary Rose know as soon as you know so that we can ensure we have a quorum. And that's it.
Ah.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
That,
Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Bedecker.
Aye.
Commissioner Bahav.
Aye.
Commissioner Black.
Aye.
Commissioner Jim Connors.
aye.
Commissioner, Commissioner Munson.
Aye.
Commissioner Ricky.
Aye.
Commissioner Valvo.
Aye.
And Chairman Magnan.
Aye, the motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Have a great holiday season, everybody.
You too.
Enjoy
Everybody,
the
have a
holiday.
good year.
Have a great
Thank you
holiday.
everyone for your time.
Thank
See you next
Thank
year.
You too.
Lindsay, we're done.